On June 5, 2000, at 1 p.m., Sharon Anschutz, a 54-year-old woman, was shot and killed at the John Butler Dry Cleaners on Isley Bridge Road. Additionally, there were no arrests made for an extended period of time, which caused complete panic in the neighborhood. The culprit remained unidentified for more than 20 years, but the investigation was revived in 2022 by a reconstituted cold case unit. A team of meticulous investigators and forensic specialists worked to unearth the long-hidden truth. They carefully re-interviewed both new and old witnesses and assessed forensic data. After 20 years, the murderer was finally apprehended. How did that fateful night's events transpire? Why did the investigators decide to reopen this long-closed case in the eyes of the justice system? Hello and welcome to Mystery Detective, a channel dedicated to delving into the shadowy mysteries surrounding both resolved and unsolved cases worldwide. Stay with us as we investigate this case and find the truth. Greenville County, South Carolina is a bustling and populous area. More people live there than in any other county in the state. The county seat, where important decisions are made, is located in Greenville. What distinguishes Greenville County is its emphasis on education. Greenville County is the largest school district in South Carolina. Students learn, develop, and make plans for the future here. Greenville County is more than just choices and schools. Another attraction is the natural beauty, which includes peaceful landscapes and undulating hills. This place has a very welcoming community. Tragedies, though, can happen even in this peaceful paradise. The unsolved case of Sharon Anschutz, which persisted for almost 20 years, left a lasting impression on the town. The 19th of October 1945 saw the birth of Sharon Anschutz, daughter of Leslie Franklin Kellogg and Leona Rosetta Chester Prince. Sharon developed into a strong, driven adult. She brought warmth and a work ethic that was characteristic of the Midwest. Having grown up in northern Michigan, alongside her sisters, Sharon Anschutz grew up in Michigan. She also grew up alongside her brothers. She inherited kindness and a desire to make the world a better place from her early years. At exactly 21 years old, on July 12, 1966, she gave birth to a son named Frank. Public access to her and her son's relationship is currently restricted. Sharon relocated to Greenville, South Carolina, in her mid-40s, where she established herself and had additional children. She also had two other sons, Walter and Michael, and a daughter, Christina. She was employed at the John Butler Dry Cleaners on Isley Bridge Road, which would subsequently serve as the scene of a tragic incident. Locals knew the small dry cleaners on Isley Bridge Road. Neighbors chatted while dropping off or picking up their laundry at this communal hub. 54 years old Sharon Anschutz, the woman in charge of this dry cleaning establishment, was well known for her diligence and congenial demeanor. She was a beloved member of the Greenville community, having grown up in Michigan. Sadly, on June 5, 2000, Sharon was shot and killed during a robbery at her dry cleaning. Greenville County was forever altered by this tragedy. The killer of Sharon remained a mystery for more than 20 years. The quiet upstate town of Greenville, South Carolina, was horrified to learn of Sharon's horrific murder. On June 5, 2000, during the late summer twilight, dry cleaners were getting ready to close as the sun was setting, creating long shadows on the empty streets. Sharon arranged the counter as usual. She had no idea it would get dark on this typical evening. Among the friends and regulars that evening was an unexpected presence. A certain 44-year-old man had visited the dry cleaners. He occasionally performed strange tasks around the store, such as emptying the trash. His intentions on this fateful evening were, however, not pure. This man was going to rob the dry cleaners. He watched the company's activities in silence, waiting for the ideal moment to strike. With every task he completed in the days preceding the crime, he got closer to his malevolent objective. On the evening of June 5, 2000, he suddenly made contact with Sharon with malicious intent. Sharon stood up for herself and her dry cleaning company during a terrible ordeal. There was a gunshot at the end of the conflict that reverberated throughout the community for years. That fateful night, silence was shattered by a gunshot. The beautiful Sharon Anschutz was killed by a senseless act of violence. Her life of kindness and hard work came to an abrupt end when she was shot in the back. As the gunshot faded, the gravity of the situation hit home. Once the killer realized how serious his act was, he left shock, terror, and sadness in his wake. Tragically killed in a place where she had brought so much joy, Sharon lay behind the counter in the pool of her own blood. The neighborhood was shocked by the tragedy that night. At 1:30 p.m., a customer discovered her dead and called 911. The dry cleaners, which was once a cozy and welcoming place, turned into a somber reminder of the darkness that can be found anywhere. Sharon's work ethic and steadfastness were deeply mourned by her colleagues, friends, and family. While the murderer was at large, local authorities began a vigorous investigation. They wished to stop such a horrible act from occurring in their neighborhood, send Sharon's assailant to prison, and provide closure to her bereaved family. Despite their best efforts, the murder investigation into Sharon Anschutz stalled. In the dark, the killer had eluded capture. Following the disaster at John Butler Dry Cleaners in June 2000, Greenville County was in disbelief. Following the murder of the community's beloved Sharon Anschutz, justice had to be served. The early investigation into this horrific murder demonstrated the resolve of law enforcement as well as the community's optimistic quest for answers. When first responders arrived, the investigation started. The offender was the subject of an instant manhunt by the Greenville County Sheriff's Office. A thorough search of the crime scene was conducted for evidence, and witnesses who lived nearby were questioned. It was clear from the beginning that solving this case would require unwavering perseverance. One of the detective's biggest problems early on in the case was the absence of a suspect. With minimal evidence, Sharon was killed in the shadows. Still, the investigation was shaped by the possibility of a robbery. According to early witness accounts, the intruder intended to loot the dry cleaners. It seemed as though Sharon Anschutz had been violently robbed while attempting to defend her business. As investigators tried to find the person responsible for this horrific act of violence, this information further complicated the case. It was necessary to gather and analyze copious amounts of evidence for the initial inquiry. Every square inch of the crime scene was examined in search of hints about the perpetrator. Investigators looked for physical evidence that might provide a breakthrough, such as DNA and fingerprints. Questions were asked of witnesses at the dry cleaners. Their crucial testimony provided important details about the pre- and post-crime activities. They described the events of that night, including Sharon Anschutz's terrifying encounter with her attacker. Sharon Anschutz, who touched many lives, was mourned in Greenville County while law enforcement conducted an investigation. Her co-workers, friends, and family were in mourning. The community stood by Sharon's family during the investigation and promised to pursue justice. The outcome of the case depended on their determination. As leads dwindled and witnesses grew more elusive, the case stagnated. Sharon's loved ones remembered her, but her killer remained a mystery. The case was eventually filed under cold case. Leads dried up, witnesses moved on, and the trail of the criminal became more bleak every day. The prolonged investigation caused suffering for Sharon's friends, family, and community. This terrible crime's perpetrator was unknown for more than 20 years. Victim Sharon Anschutz continues to exist. She was a representation of strength and hope. It was hope that justice would triumph and the truth would come to light. For more than 20 years, Greenville County, South Carolina, was plagued by her cold case. A renewed quest for justice in the summer of 2022 brought this long-dormant investigation back to life. The tipping point was the new cold case unit of the Greenville County Sheriff's Office. which debuted in the summer of 2022. Sheriff Lewis established a specialized unit in 2020 to look into cases that remain unsolved, such as the Sharon Anschutz cold case. His objectives were to resurrect past investigations, assess the evidence, speak with witnesses again, and employ fresh techniques. The pursuit of justice for victims of unsolved crimes was revitalized by this cold case unit. The community was assured that every case would be taken seriously and that no effort would be spared. The Sharon Anschutz cold case reinvestigation started by detectives reaching out to witnesses of the June 2000 incident at the dry cleaners in an attempt to gather information. They confronted witnesses whose memories had faded. Regardless, reconstructing the crime and the attacker's actions required careful consideration of their testimonies. These extra interviews shed light on the events of that evening. The murderer's meeting of Sharon Anschutz was revealed by witnesses. Their memories, though fading, were essential to solving the mystery. Technology and forensic evidence were scarce early in the case, but over time, forensic science developed. This gave the reinvestigation team the opportunity to assess the evidence with state-of-the-art techniques. Forensic specialists meticulously examined crime scene material using modern methodologies in order to uncover new information. Ballistic testing and DNA fingerprinting were repeated. Although exhausting, it resulted in a breakthrough. Old clues were re-examined and new leads surfaced as the investigation went on. Witnesses who were interviewed again disclosed the attacker's goals. The horrifying events that transpired at the dry cleaners were re-examined and determined to be an attempted robbery gone wrong. Investigators also looked into the connections of Roger Keith Hudgens, the key suspect who died in 2008. Hudgens was a neighbor of the dry cleaners. Witness accounts and his connections within the establishment shed light on the murderer's activities. The breakthrough in the Sharon Anschutz cold case was the result of diligent work, fresh interviews, and advanced forensic analysis. Investigators determined that Sharon Anschutz was killed by 44-year-old Roger Keith Hudgens at the beginning of January 2023. Testimonies from witnesses and forensic evidence shed light on that fatal evening. Horrible things happened as a result of Hudgens' plan to rob the dry cleaners. In the Sharon Anschutz cold case, no one was taken into custody despite this effort. Hudgens is the culprit, the investigators concluded, but he passed away in 2008. It provided closure to the victim's family and addressed inquiries from the community. The crime and its aftermath will always be associated with Hudgens, even though he was never charged with it. The case was resolved after years of investigation, law enforcement, and community commitment to the truth. The story demonstrates that a community can crack even the most challenging cold case. Even though no one was arrested, Greenville County was prepared for the Sharon Anschutz cold case trial after 20 years of uncertainty. Justice had produced findings that would go to trial. This trial would prove law enforcement's and the community's commitment to justice, as well as provide closure for the betrayed. Roger Keith Hudgens, the main suspect, went on trial, even in death. His actions on that fateful day in June 2000 were gaining legal attention, even after he passed away in 2008. The personnel at the dry cleaners knew Hudgens, a local, from Sharon Anschutz's tragic robbery. Witness accounts and forensic evidence would be used by the prosecution to discredit Hudgens. As the trial started, the courtroom was filled with anticipation. The prosecution meticulously gathered testimony from witnesses about that terrible night. They gave a detailed account of Hudgens and Sharon Anschutz's meeting prior to the crime. The forensic evidence that was re-examined was crucial to the case. Experts in ballistics attested that Hudgens' weapon was used in the killing. His DNA was found at the crime scene, which provided strong evidence in his criminal case. To undermine the prosecution, the defense made a move. They questioned witness accounts, saying that memories had become hazy with time. To cast doubt, they also questioned the chain of custody for the evidence. For justice and closure, Sharon Anschitz's friends, family, and co-workers were present. Weeks of court cases, talks, and introspection led up to the moment of truth. The jury unanimously found Roger Keith Hudgens guilty of killing Sharon Anschitz. The verdict that provided closure to Sharon's family and confirmed the community's and law enforcement's commitment to justice reverberated throughout the courtroom. Despite his passing, Hudgens will always be associated with the senseless crime that left the town scarred. Roger Keith Hudgens was found guilty and his sentencing commenced. A sentence that was appropriate for the crime was what the prosecution sought. The defense, on the other hand, asked for mercy, pointing to Hudgens' innocence and lack of criminal history. The trial came to an end when Hudgens was found guilty of the tragedy that occurred that evening. The sentence's symbolic meaning conveys a strong message of justice. The Sharon Anschitz cold case trial served as a tribute to the perseverance of a community in cracking a cold case. It demonstrated the resilience of justice and truth. Some criminals leave an indelible mark on the people they wronged. Roger Keith Hudgens' life was connected to Greenville County's most horrifying incident in the Sharon Anschitz cold case. Roger Keith Hudgens was familiar with Greenville County. Hudgens' birth date is September 13, 1955. He had a good local reputation. He was well known for frequenting the dry cleaners, where the old case started. Hudgens performed strange jobs at the dry cleaners over the years. Every now and then, he removed the trash. On February 17, 2008, Roger Keith Hudgens passed away. He passed away due to medical issues. Any legal action against him was terminated by his death because he would never face justice. His name was still connected to the unsolved case of Sharon Anschitz. Even though he would never be held responsible, justice would always be associated with him and his deeds. What are your thoughts on this case? Let us know what you think by leaving a comment. Karen Moore, a 52-year-old Caucasian woman from Davie, Florida, left her home at 7 p.m. on June 26, 2001, the day before her birthday, and she would never come back. Christina, her 8-year-old daughter, would return from summer camp the following day in honor of her mother's birthday, but her mother would not be there to welcome her home. Where might Karen have gone to? Was there any criminal activity surrounding her disappearance? Will she ever return? Christina had been looking for answers to these questions for 22 long years until now. Davie, a cozy suburban community in Florida's Broward County, offers the warmth of a close-knit neighborhood and the vitality of Western-themed attractions. Both tourists and locals find the city's year-round sunshine, mild weather, and the close proximity to beaches to be attractive features. Due to Davie's position as the center of several university campuses, it is well known for housing college students. Davie offers an abundance of recreational opportunities, high-quality education, and friendly neighborhood living. It is in this beautiful city that our case starts today. On June 27, 1948, Thomas Stewart Moore and Olga Charlotte Moore welcomed a daughter into the world. Karen Elizabeth Moore was the name they gave her. She had a sister named Pam as well. Growing up, Karen loved playing the piano, sailing, hiking, and cooking. Since she was a young girl, Karen has had a strong interest in travel. Nobody would have imagined that one day she would leave and never return. She earned her Associates in Art degree in 1968 and her Bachelor's in Science with a nursing major in 1979. 53 years old Karen Elizabeth Moore and her husband were divorcing in 2001. She had a restraining order against him. Christina was their 8-year-old daughter, and Karen was granted full custody of her. Prior to her disappearance, Karen worked as a nurse at the Boca Raton Retirement Community Edge Point Estates, and despite working full-time, she never wavered in her commitment to giving Christina a good upbringing. She made certain Christina had the most enjoyable years of her life. Christina recalls Karen as a loving mother as well, Even though she worked as a nurse, Karen made out time to spend with Christina by taking her to the zoo and engaging in other activities. She simply wanted to give her daughter a happy and healthy childhood. However, the happy picture of this family would soon change into a sad one that was full of unanswered questions. On June 27, 2001, Karen was to turn 53 years old. To celebrate with her mother, Christina returned from her Girl Scout camp, but Karen wasn't home to welcome her. When Karen failed to pick her up, Christina knew that something was wrong. Karen was a nurse, so it was conceivable that she was preoccupied at the office. However, Karen was always available for her daughter and would have sent someone else to pick up Christina if she had to go to work. It was a very strange situation. The story that followed grew eerier by the hour as the day passed by. Around 6:30 p.m. on June 26, 2001, Karen paid her neighbor's son to mow her lawn, and that was the last time anyone had seen her. Around 7 o'clock in the evening, she left the house in her white 1999 Saturn. Nobody knew why she had stepped outside or where she might have gone. After waiting for hours and she still failed to show up at the house, Pam Kleiss, Karen's sister, called the police. Pam revealed that on the day Karen vanished, she had asked her ex-husband to pick up Christina from camp before she left for work. She then later had a quick conversation with her neighbor's son before leaving the house. Nobody knows what happened after these incidents. The following day, she had a job to report for. Keith Kreidel, the executive director at Edgepoint Estates, the retirement community where Karen worked, mentioned Karen's 8 years of reliable and responsible work history. Because Karen cared so deeply about her work, if there was ever an urgent task, she would have notified the establishment. Everyone, including her, was aware of how much Christina meant to her. There was no question that Karen did not leave on her own accord. Was this merely a distressing accident, or was there another factor at work here? The search for Karen Moore was hampered by the police's limited resources and growing suspicions. Tracking her car was the first thing they needed to do. Karen was driving a white 1999 Saturn 4-door with a license plate DOOTHU when she mysteriously vanished. On the back of her car was a sticker for Indiana State University. Every detail of this information was made available to the public. A woman soon reported seeing the same car in South Miami-Dade County. According to a tip given to Davie Police Department Detective James Franquez, but the information was unconfirmed and unsupported by any other witnesses. In a last-ditch effort to move the case along, the police published a missing poster that described Karen's appearance. She was depicted on the posters as having brown hair, brown eyes, and glasses. She was described as being 5 feet, 4 inches tall. The police were searching for leads to find Karen's whereabouts but were having no luck. Her home's initial inspection was a sufficient indicator of bad news. Her entire wardrobe, luggage, and even her phone were discovered at home. A closer inspection of her home revealed no indications of trespassing or forced entry. The detective surmised that Karen must have left the house voluntarily, but it was still unclear why she had left. Detective James Franquez informed the public that Karen Moo's phone and financial records were being investigated by the police. He immediately ruled out theft or robbery when her bank account and credit card showed no activity. This implied that Karen was in a terrible situation. Since she still had all her necessities at home, she would have needed money to support herself, right? The police were asked by Karen's family to use a helicopter to look for her, but they were unable to do so because they were unsure of Karen's possible route. Karen Moore had completely disappeared without a trace. Despite the Moore family and the entire police department posting missing person posters with rewards, days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, and months turned into years as Karen's family waited for her to return. Years and years passed, but Karen never came back. Although Christina, her daughter, got married and had kids of her own. Karen's fate from that day remained a mystery. On January 6, 2023, Mike Sullivan and Michael Rodriguez, who were leading the Sunshine State sonar team in searching the nearby water bodies in Broward County, were joined by Britton Lockhart, a scuba diver and the owner of the YouTube channel Depths of History. They discovered a car in a Davie retention pond with the aid of cutting-edge sonar technology. The entire team realized they had struck car wheels in the water when Michael saw his underwater sonar system start to light up. They searched for the car for about 15 minutes before finding it. Britton dove to inspect it and discovered an open trunk and a license plate buried beneath 3 feet of muck. Although they were confident that they had discovered something significant, they were unsure of its specifics and whether it was connected to any prior cases. The Davie Police Department was immediately contacted by Britton Lockhart. Karen's mysterious disappearance occurred 22 years ago, but Davie police hadn't forgotten about her. They had to send the divers back into the water when they got to the scene the following day. The car was extricated from the water and taken for additional inspection. The vehicle Karen was driving when she vanished matched the description of the car. Karen's car's license plate was discovered to be covered in dust. It was a significant finding in this 22-year-old case. The puzzle was beginning to come together. 2 bones were discovered inside the vehicle, and it was later determined that Karen Moore had been there when it crashed into the lake. They at last learned what had happened to Karen Moore. Even though the entire search mission was broadcast live on YouTube, Lockhart and Rodriguez were unable to discuss the specifics of the case. The search teams and even the Moore family were barred from giving interviews about the case because the police suspected foul play. Even though the whats, hows, and whys of her mother's disappearance have been a mystery for 22 years, Christina has now received closure on the matter. Karen mysteriously vanished, leaving Christina in the custody of her family. There could never be a replacement for the warmth and closeness she experienced with her mother. In her early years, she experienced frequent ups and downs. She even spent some time in foster care. She would miss her mother during these times and pray that she would be found or come back to her. Every life moment that every little girl hopes and dreams, to have their mother with them. My own birthdays, when I got engaged and married. Now I have 2 kids. They didn't get to know their grandmother, Christina heartbreakingly said in an interview. Without a doubt, Christina and her mother had a close relationship. She posted on TikTok in 2021, even after all these years, lamenting how she wished she had had a little more time with her mother. Christina finally learned the fate about her mother after 22 long years. Although Christina was unable to find all the answers to the questions that had troubled her for years, she was nonetheless grateful to the police and search teams for allowing her to bring Karen back home and allow her to be laid to rest in peace. The investigation into Karen Moore's disappearance is still active and ongoing. Davie police informed Fox News Digital via email that they had met with the detectives but were unable to comment further, due to concerns that doing so might compromise the investigation's chances of success. The next round of pressing inquiries surfaced following the discovery of Karen's remains in the pond. What caused Karen to fall into the pond? What was the purpose of this crime? Assuming the police's suspicions are accurate, who was to blame for Christina and the Moore family's 22 years of suffering? There is still hope for Karen now that she has come home after 22 years. A partial success was achieved thanks to the police department's commitment and technological advancements in sonar systems. Even though the answers currently seem hazy, Karen's justice could be right around the corner. Do not be afraid to speak up if you know anything. Your knowledge could be crucial to solving a long-standing mystery. Was Karen's death a result of an accident or something more nefarious? Do you think this case can advance any further? Post your ideas in the comments section to share with us. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave likes and comments. Until next time, keep yourself safe and on the lookout for another mystery to be unraveled. Thank you for watching.